بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم افتح لنا فتوح العارفين وارزقنا توفيق الصالحين وارزقنا عملا صالحا ترضى به يا أرحم الراحمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Everyone's well, inshallah. Right, so inshallah, needed to get this up as well, didn't I? Allahu Akbar. So, who remembers the high objectives? High objectives of the fast? How many? 3 high objectives of the fast. Which are? To attain taqwa, to become grateful, shukr, and guidance, right? Rushd, guidance. Right, mashallah. And so you'll see, let's just go to this verse again. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the month. And so the first way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the month is that a month in which the Quran is revealed, which is quite interesting because, most people think that the verse before where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we made fasting obligatory upon you so that you may gain taqwa, that's not necessarily linked to Ramadan, or it's not necessarily speaking about Ramadan. Because why? Because the fast of Ramadan came later. This is a command. This is just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informing us what the purpose behind fast is. The purpose behind a fast is primarily to attain taqwa. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Ramadan, speaks about Ramadan, He doesn't necessarily mention taqwa as being the objective of Ramadan per se. You understanding the point here? Difference. Most of the time, when we listen, because most people, whenever we speak about Ramadan, we say the goal is taqwa, goal is taqwa. However, that's not based on how the Quran explains Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. Yes, it's based on what the purpose or the intent or the objective of the fast is. The objective of the fast, whether it's in Ramadan or outside the Ramadan, is what? Is taqwa. But not necessarily the one in Ramadan. Of course, if you're fasting in Ramadan, you're going to be attaining taqwa. Right? Well, why am I saying this? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Ramadan, the first thing that He mentions about Ramadan is the Quran. That it's a month of the Quran. And the Quran is a book of guidance. And if you're fasting, you're increasing in taqwa, you're increasing in your connection with the Quran, you're increasing your connection with the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So hopefully, I hope this is this is clear that taqwa is when Allah mentions that the goal is to attain taqwa, that's the goal of the fast, not necessarily the goal of Ramadan. The goal of Ramadan is a little bit more. Part of the goal of Ramadan objective is taqwa, not the entire Ramadan. Ramadan in its entirety isn't just about attaining taqwa. There's other things. All right. So I hope that's a little bit clear. Okay, so let's just go through this verse again, and we'll see that there's actually a few sub-objectives as well, some mini objectives that take place. So first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind us of the Shahr Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is the one in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the Quran, which is a guidance to mankind, right? And it's a clarification. And so here Allah says, so whoever from you witnesses the month, then let him fast. That's the commandment to fast in the month of Ramadan. That's what it comes. It comes from this verse. And at this particular point, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. And then Allah says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا, and whoever is ill from you or upon a journey, then what? then iddatu min ayyamin ukhra, they've got to make this up. They've got to make this up. They've got to make the days up. Now, why is that important? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about fasting generally speaking, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about fasting, and he said, ayyamu ma'dudat, it's a number prescribed, a prescribed number of days, ayyamu ma'dudat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the option of either fasting, making up those days, doing what we call qaza, doing qada of those days, or you had the option of giving fidya, expiation. That was for those fasts that were the prescribed number of days. How many were they? Who remembers? How many? There were 3 fasts, right? The 3 fasts in the month. That's those that have been referred to as ayyam ma'dudat, a small number of days. In those fasts, Allah subhanahu, even though they were obligatory, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the option that if you can't make up those fasts, then what do? You've got the option of either making them up, or if you can't, then just give an expiation. And this is why a lot of those that had money, they were wealthy, instead of making up the fast, what would they do? Right? They would just pay. They just pay the fidya. They'd give the expiation, and that was done. That was done. And that's for who are ill or on a journey. Now here in Ramadan, the ruling is slightly different. What's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying? He's saying, if you can't make them up you're on a journey or you're ill, you have the option of paying expiation. Can't make, I'm ill, so I'll just pay a kafara, I'll pay an expiation and done. I don't have to make up the qada fast. No, he didn't give us that option. He didn't give us that option. And what's interesting is, straight after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? He desires for you ease, and he doesn't desire for you difficulty. Allah desires for us ease and doesn't desire for us difficulty. But the question is, well, before, when the fasts were prescribed, the three-day fast, you gave us, it was way easier. It was much easier, right? You had the option of either making up the fast or giving a kafara. But here in Ramadan, there's no option of giving a kafara. You have to make them up. So where's the ease then? Where's the ease? Question. Where is the ease? Allah saying, I desire for you, and this becomes a maxim now in the entire law. That the laws of Islam are based on ease and not difficulty. Allah desires for us ease and not difficulty. So where is the ease then? The question. Yeah, but comparatively, that was, you had that option even before, when there was only 3 fasts. And during that time, you had the option of giving kafara and doing a qada. But here, you have no option of giving kafara. Surely that was easier. That if I can't fast, I'm on a journey, just give kafara, nice and that, done, dusted, no obligation upon me, no worries after that. But now I've got this worry. If I didn't fast for some reason, well, the reason, if I was ill or I was on a journey during Ramadan, that fast is still upon me all the way up until I pass away. So where's the ease? In the hereafter, that's one answer. Yes, why in the hereafter? Because you're exerting yourself a little bit more. Yes, yeah, you're doing a little bit more. That's one possible answer. He desires for us ease, and he doesn't desire for us difficulty. It's through these fasts. Right? What was the purpose again of the fast? What's the objective of the fast? To attain a taqwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making us be able to attain taqwa easy, and that's what he's saying. He's saying, I desire for you ease. This is where your ease is gonna happen. Right? By you fasting, that's how you're gonna get to me. So I'm actually making the route easy for you, even though you might think, right? Because if you haven't thought about the purpose of fast, the objective of fast, you might think, well, it's a little bit more difficult. But it's not difficult. It's not difficult. Really, what's happening is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making the journey towards attaining taqwa, to becoming closer to him, easy for us. That's where the ease is. Right? Yuridullahu bikum al-yusra wa la yuridu bikum al-usra. And then you have 2 more things here. You have walitukmilu al-idda, so that you complete a prescribed period, or you could say a program, a number of days, as they try and translate it here, a prescribed period. Okay, that's like, you could say this is a sub-objective of the fast. And then there's something else that comes straight after, which is وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, and so that you can glorify or proclaim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness. These are two objectives. And then you've got the main objective, the second main objective, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And after all this, perhaps you're going to become a little bit more grateful. Perhaps you're going to become a little bit more grateful by doing this, by going through what? The program of Ramadan. This verse is specifically about the program of Ramadan, which includes what? Includes the fast as well as the Quran. And we spoke about what there's a link between fasting and the Quran. Right? And it's not, like we said, it's not a coincidence that in the nights, it's like a sunnah mu'akkad that you go and stand and listen and recite Quran or listen to some Quran. So where's this? وَلِتُكْمِلُ الْعِدَّةَ as sub-objective, so that you may complete a prescribed period. What's so great about that? How can that be a sub-objective? No? Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention this? Or one of the reasons? I can't answer I kind of alluded to, because it's a program. It's a program. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to go through a training program. And when you go through a training program and you actually complete something, there's a couple of things that you learn by completing something. Firstly, you attain you attain some sort of steadfastness. You learn what it takes to do something day in, day out, go through a training period. Right? It's really important for our development, for your own personal development, to be able to complete something, go through a program and complete it the way it's supposed to be completed. You've actually attained one of the most important skills that you need in life, right? That I start something and I learn how to finish it. I start something and I learn how to finish it. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inculcating in us, and we subconsciously, we're probably not even aware that just this idea of completing something, I get this sense of achievement. How many of us could say in our lives, we've done something, we actually saw it till the end? How many things have we done like that? How many things have we done like that? This is what Ramadan does. It's one of the, it's actually given psychologically, it's planting something inside us. Well, it took me you probably just brush past it. Okay, it was like, okay, the purpose, if sub-objective is to complete a prescribed period, which is 30 days or 29 days, and that's it. No, there's a deeper meaning in that. And then the next thing Allah says, وَلِتُكْبِرُ اللَّهَ وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. And then you proclaim His greatness. After seeing after understanding this whole program, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking me to fast, in which I'm developing my taqwa. He's made it a month of Quran, and He's mentioned specifically that the book of Quran is a source of guidance. And I'm adding these two things together, that there's this month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has locked up the devils. So He's made it half the job easier for me, and then He's prescribed for me fasting, which is the second half, which is made easier for me, that my nafs I'm able to control. When you realize this, when you realize what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually doing, then you can only really say one thing, which is what? To raise your hands and say Allahu Akbar. That's what takbir is here. Takbir comes from that word, Allahu Akbar, that, oh Allah, you are great. That I'm starting to understand what this whole program was about. That you're actually giving me the opportunity to come closer to you, to increase my levels of taqwa with you. When you do that, it's وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ, and you glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the manifestations of that is in the Eid prayer that we do. How many takbirat? Why 6 takbirat? Isn't one sufficient? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. At the end, we glorify and we proclaim His greatness and say, thank you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what? وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, because you've been guided. The takbirat, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you. And then وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And perhaps after all this, you'll start being a little bit more grateful. You understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually is doing for you in your life. Right? And this is just, just basing on the verse. This is just basing on the verse that, we understand what it means to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's done all these things for us. But even, from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what do we know what happens in Ramadan? In terms of our deeds, what happens? These are what? Multiplied. You pray that same prayer that you were praying outside Ramadan, which equated what? 10 good deeds. And in Ramadan, how many times more? 70 times more that prayer. And you think, well, Allah, I've done the same prayer, same takbirat, same takbir, same ruku, same sajda, Same amount of raka'at. I'm praying, I'm reciting Quran. Outside of the month, I was getting 10 rewards per what? Per word? Per word? Per letter. Per letter, I was getting 10 rewards. And now, during Ramadan, I'm getting 70 times. What's going on here? 70 times 10 is what? 70 times 10? 700. 700 rewards. 700 rewards by doing the same thing. And you know, well, I haven't done anything. We haven't done anything. This is all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's generosity. And so when you understand it like this, that what this program entails, you cannot be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. It's a point in your life that you actually realize this greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acting upon you in your life. You understand this, right? You know, subhanallah, I'm just reflecting over this idea of we've got there's types of souls that are mentioned in the Quran. What are the types of souls that are mentioned in the Quran? How many are they, firstly? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions souls, he speaks about the souls. 3 souls. What are they? What are they? It's the nafs what? Ammara. Nafs ammara. Nafs what? I'll just turn it off. What's happening there? Inshallah. You know, there's a connection with the with the projector here. Let's do this thing. Oh. Okay. Somebody can try to sort that out. Okay. So you've got nafs ammara. What's the nafs ammara? The one which incites you. Yes, incites you towards evil. Nafs ammara. This is in the Quran. In the nafs la'ammaratun bisu, that the inciting soul, right? Incites towards what? Towards evil. Everybody's got this. But what happens when you embrace Islam? That soul kind of it gets covered, gets buried. But the odd occasions it does come back. And then you've got the nafsul lawama. What's the nafsul lawama? Reproaching soul. So if you make a mistake, that sense of guilt that you feel, that's the nafsul lawama. And then you have nafsul mutma'inna, that tranquil soul, that soul which is in serenity. And the question is, well, these 3 souls, when we speak about these souls, it's like, there's it's progressive, right? It's gradual. That you work on that once you embrace Islam, and you're doing good. You're trying, you've got the nafsul lawama, working constantly. And then hopefully the goal is what? To get to nafsul mutma'inna, as you become a tranquil soul. Now, for most of us, that might not happen. We might not ever reach that level of we're amongst those that are the tranquil souls, right? That, we've attained that as a fixed state. That's only for really a few. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words are not futile. They're not, he hasn't just mentioned it just so that only a few can attain that. That only a few can attain that. Why Allah subhanahu, one of the reasons why Allah mentions is that there will be periods in your life that you will actually experience that tranquil soul. You will actually experience what it means, or how that soul, that nafsul mutma'inna, actually feels like. Like what kind of instances in our lives? Anybody ever felt it? When Hajj, Umrah, when you're in that elated state, that's nafsul mutma'inna. You actually, even if it's temporarily, you're in that state of itmi'nan, of sincerity. It's like, all your worries are gone. And it's similar in Ramadan. In Ramadan, you have this opportunity to at least, even if I won't get into that fixed state, that constant state of nafsul mutma'inna, that everything is just like I'm in that state always, which some of the great men of Allah and women of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are. Even if I'm never going to achieve that, at least in some moments in my life, I've tasted how that feels, how it feels to be in a state of itmi'nan. And these were some of the programs like Ramadan. Ramadan is one of those programs that you will have in your life where you'll be able to taste what it feels like to be in a serene, tranquil state. Do you understand this? Now, okay, and then you got the final objectives. So we've got two. We've done two, and then we've got some two sub objectives, and then the final one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. Oh, subhanallah. Shall I just take this out and maybe hope it works? Oh, how has that happened? How has that happened? But I need to charge it. Okay, bismillah. So just have a look at the verse at least, right? So then this is the verse that comes straight after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning about Ramadan. It says Ramadan is the month in which we reveal the Quran, right? And then all the objectives, the objective of like that, so you become grateful. And then it's this. And when my servant asks of me, I am near. I respond to the one who calls me whenever he calls. So let him respond and let him believe so that he may attain rushd, that uprightness, that moral uprightness, that true, the way that guidance should look like, so that this is the purpose of it. Why does this come straight after the verse of Ramadan? And how is this linked to as how does this become part of the objectives of Ramadan? All your ibadat, and your devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's the purpose of it? What is the purpose of it? To get closer to Allah, to connect yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To connect yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's the greatest proof of your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You can say, yeah, I know I'm connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is it? Yeah, when I make dua to him, what happens? Yeah, he answers my prayer. And you'll actually find certain individuals who've reached that, whether that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, even, without them having gone through this program. But there's people who are mustajabu da'wah, that whenever they call him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds. Right? It seems like there's no connection with the verse before, but there is a connection. And that connection is that the whole program of Ramadan was one in which you were supposed to attain taqwa. Through that taqwa, you became a little bit more grateful for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what he does, and developed such a connection with him that you become amongst those people that you actually feel that I've got a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's one thing having a one-way connection, but this is two-way connection. That this is happening, that Allah's responding to you. Everybody's calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everybody's Allah, and Allah is close to everybody, but it's our distancing, isn't it? So what you're doing is you're narrowing that distance between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and really achieving what the whole point of your ibadah is, that I actually have got a connection to my Lord. I've got a connection to my Lord. And even if you look at it, look at the structure of the verse, subhanallah, it's not like Allah hasn't said that when my servant calls me, I answer him. No, it's what? I answer him when he calls me. Just amazing. Right. And there's a lot more to be said about this verse. Right. It's you probably, I don't know if people have heard that. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي, when my servant asks of me, what's the next logical word that you would hear? When my servant asks of me, when he asks you of me, then what? Then say to him, I am close. I respond to the caller whenever he calls me. But in this verse, you don't even see this phrase, that when my servant calls me, when my servant asks you of me, then say to him. No, because what do you think? What do you think the wisdom behind that is? What's the wisdom behind that? One of the wisdoms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he hasn't even said that phrase, that when my servant asks you of me, then say to him. What's the whole theme behind of this verse? The theme is what? In one sentence, what's the theme of this verse? That Allah is so close that whenever you call him, he'll respond. Whenever you call him, he'll respond. To emphasize this point that I am so close to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even omits this little phrase in between, that when they ask you about me, then say to them, I said straight away, I'll just tell them, I am close to them when they respond to me. Even this phrase, I'm going to omit this phrase, which is emphasizing the point that I'm making, which is what? That I am that close to him that I don't even need to what? I don't even need to mention this phrase. Do you understand this point? No? Inshallah. This is like, you have this, a lot of this like ellipsis in the Quran. Like, the words are, or sentences or small phrases are omitted, but, and then there's a purpose behind it. Okay, ujibu da'wat ad-da'i. Okay, so inshallah, that's, hopefully we understand some of the higher objectives, or at least the ones that we find in the Quran, which are to develop a taqwa, and that would be through the fast. And then you got the whole Ramadan program, which is what, it's a book, it's a month in which you attach yourself to the Quran. By attaching yourself to the Quran, you get to understand the Quran. That's the whole point of it. It's always, when I was reflecting over the famous hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentions, the reward of the one who fasts. What does he say about the one who fasts? The reward of the one who fasts is what? Is من صام رمضان احتسابا وإيمانا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه وما تأخر. Whoever fasts anticipating reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the previous sins are forgiven. All the previous sins are forgiven. And then you have another hadith with the same wording. All that's changed is whoever stands in prayer during Ramadan, all his sins are forgiven with iman, and with iman, with belief and anticipating reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all their sins are forgiven. And it's like, whoa, how is that? That's not even, how are you getting the same reward for two different actions which have two different legal rulings? What's the legal ruling of the fast? It's a what? It's an obligation. And I can understand, okay, so the reward would be what? All your sins are forgiven. What's the legal ruling for standing in prayer in Taraweeh? Sunnah mu'akkada. So how am I getting the same reward for the Sunnah mu'akkada as I am for a fard? What's that telling us about standing in prayer? What's that telling us about standing in prayer? What's it telling us? If I'm getting the same reward for a Sunnah mu'akkada as I am for a fard, importance of it, importance, and even like how high up it is as the objective of Ramadan, that actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to stand in prayer. Because what are you going to be able to do in prayer that you don't really do outside the prayer or outside Ramadan? What you're going to be able to do? You're going to be able to reflect over the Quran, because that's the whole point. That's the whole point. That's the primary purpose of Ramadan, not the taqwa. The taqwa's primary purpose is the fast. Primary purpose is taqwa. But for Ramadan, it's what? Quran, to become more attached to the Quran. Inshallah, bitawfiq, inshallah. Okay, so let's just go to a little bit of fiqh now. Right, some of the legal rulings that we need to know, inshallah. Spend a bit of time on that. Any questions over what's already been said? No? Okay. So first thing, we need to make intention. Intention for the fast. What's the intention? How does the intention look like? Just in your heart, as long as you say in your heart, intend in your heart that I'm going to fast the month of Ramadan, or I'm going to fast the fast of Ramadan. That is sufficient. You don't have to verbally utter it. Even though if you were to, that's better, because firstly, it'll remind you of while you're doing a thing, and secondly, it'll take you out of the khilaf of the other schools. The other schools is like a condition, like the Shafi'i school is a condition to what to say, verbally articulated. Now, for Ramadan, so I was going to mention this first, and then I'll give you a little overview of how the different types of fasts, what kind of intentions, what's the conditions, and when we're making the intention. So at least this one, let's just understand this. Otherwise, the other one might be get a little bit confusing. So the main thing we need to remember, that when we're making the fast of Ramadan, we have all the way from the previous Maghrib, so the Maghrib before the fast that we're going to fast, Maghrib, okay, because the night comes in first in Islam, yes? Night comes in first. From Maghrib time all the way up until what we call Dahwatul Kubra. Dahwatul Kubra is midday, the technical Shari'i midday. How do I work that out? How do I work that out? The time from when Fajr starts up until Maghrib. From when Fajr starts up until Maghrib, how many hours? Potentially, how many hours? Let's say 10 hours. Divided in half, that's my Dahwatul Kubra. That's my Islamic midday. So it's not the same as, the midday that we're probably used to, right? 12 o'clock noon or something. No, not that. Dahwatul Kubra is actually a little bit earlier. Up until that time, you have to make your intention. If you've made your intention within that time, that fast for that day is valid. Okay, but what's the best practice? That you make your intention before, when you go to sleep, and at least before Fajr starts. Okay, that's the best practice. But as long as you've done this, this would be sufficient. All right, this will be sufficient. And this is why, like some people might, unfortunately, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not allow this to happen to us this Ramadan, that they've overslept, slept through Fajr, and then they wake up, 10, 11 o'clock. Can they now fast? Yes. Yes, because still before Dahwatul Kubra, and inshallah their fast will be valid for that day. All right, and this is just a couple of types of. There's two main things about intentions, right? There's one where you've got to you can make a general. Let's start with this one. You make a general intention suffices. I don't need to specify particularly. Let's say tomorrow, this particular day, whatever the date is going to be, 24th March. I am going to fast the month of Ramadan. I fast from the month of Ramadan. I'm going to make a specific intention, or just general. I'm going to fast. That is valid for the fast of Ramadan. And for any other nafil fast you're going to do, you don't have to specify it. You don't have to mention it. And also you've got all the way from when? From the Maghrib before, all the way up until Dahwatul Kubra, you can make this an intention. All right. And then another mu'ayyan, this is like an oath, a vow you made, that on Thursday, the 16th of March, I will fast. Once I've done that, that's it. I don't have to make this intention again. That's it. It's done. All right. And then you've got these other fasts where, like expiation fast or making up Ramadan fast, I need to have the intention, and that intention has to happen before Fajr, before dawn. All right. Is that understood? No? Okay. Any questions about that? Main thing we need to, if it's the minimum we need to take back is this. And hopefully, inshallah, everybody's understood that. Okay. And then, okay, what invalidates the fast? This is important. What invalidates fast? There's two categories for this. So it'll invalidate the fast, it'll break your fast, as well as you will incur a penalty of what? Of giving an expiation, of giving a kafara. And that expiation is down there at the bottom. What's a kafara? The kafara is what? Fasting 60 consecutive days. That's in the Quran. This is all in the Quran. And if you can't do that for whatever reason, you can't fast the 60 consecutive days, then it's feeding 60 people, 60 poor people, that is, right? 2 meals a day. 2 meals a day. Or you feed one person for 60 days, 2 meals a day. Hopefully, inshallah, nobody will need to give a kafara. Huh? When do I invalidate the fast and have to give a kafara, give an expiation? It is really important to understand is when I deliberately do something, right? An act which breaks the fast, and I'm not forced to do this. I done it from my own will, and there's no valid reason for me to break that fast. All right. So when you look at it like that, it's like very specific circumstances or instances when this will ever happen, that you break the fast and you've done it on purpose. There's no outside reason, or no reason, you're forcing you or making you do that. Then in that case, the fast will break as well as giving expiation. Otherwise, for most of the times that we hear that the fast is broken, that's only just making it up, no expiation. All right. Just look at like a common example. Yeah, I might just throw this in. If you're playing some sports, yeah, you're playing sport, and you've done it so intensely that what you're gonna have to when it's some water, you're gonna have to break your fast. Which category do you think that comes into? So you've broken your fast because you need water, and that was because you've done some exercise, intensely. Why is that? Because you chose, right? You didn't have to go that hard, and you didn't have to play that sport either. That's now you bringing something upon yourself. So if that ever happens, which is possible, this is possible, then it's expiation. And that expiation, like I said, is what? How many days fast? 60 days fast, 2 consecutive months. And if you, for whatever reason, something happens in between, you're going to have to start again. You're going to have to start the 2 months again. It's quite strict ruling, but that's what an expiation is. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it, Allah obviously makes it easy for us in that. I mean, the first route is, by the way, freeing a slave. But obviously we don't got no slaves now unless people have got slaves, I don't know. That's the first thing. If you can't do that, then it's 60 days, consecutive days fasting. And if you can't do that, then it's feeding the people. Okay. Yes. All right. What invalidates the fast? Couple of things we'll mention. Okay, eating and drinking accidentally. What's the difference between accidentally and forgetfully? Huh? Gone in, yeah. Is that accidentally or is that forgetfully? That's accidentally. So if I'm making wudu as an example, and accidentally some water goes into my throat and I can feel it's gone down, trickled down, will that invalidate my fast? No? Because it was what? Accidentally. Yeah. So if it's accidentally, what happens? Yes. It does break the fast. These are what invalidates the fast. What invalidates the fast? This is, by the way, guys, this is fard ain knowledge. This is knowledge that is incumbent. It's a fard, it's a duty, an obligation, individual obligation. This is, if we're not going to learn this, then this is kind of things that we're gonna be asked on the Day of Judgment. Why didn't we? This is why, alhamdulillah, Allah gave us the opportunity to come, for me to revise and for you guys to learn as well, and for some to revise as well. Okay, eating and drinking accidentally. There's a difference between forgetfully and accidentally. So forgetfully is like, just somebody gave you sweet and you just thought, it wasn't Ramadan, which can happen in the early days of Ramadan. You're going to just drink and, forgot or ate something. And when that happens, you got a beautiful hadith which says, well, if someone eats forgetfully, then his prayer, his fast is intact. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fed him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that food. So don't worry, you don't need to worry. All right. Use of inhaler, and you're gonna have difference of opinion on this one, right? Inhaler, in the Hanafi school, it's anybody who's in inhaler. Siddhi, you got another? You got another fatwa for this? No? Okay. Okay. Inhaler will invalidate. There's a general principle. So if you understand the general principle, inshallah, all these smaller particulars, right, you'll be able to understand them a little bit better. And the general principle is what? Anything that enters your stomach, from your nose, your mouth, and your 2 passages, right? I hope you understand what I mean by 2 passages, right? Anything that enters into your stomach through them directly invalidates your fast. Okay, that's the general principle. And what about indirectly? If they enter indirectly, gone through pores or no, right? Unless it's what? So I didn't hear that. Yeah, which is going what? Which is going to reach the stomach. Yes, then that would invalidate. Otherwise, like, you got patches or, like nicotine patches and these energy patches as well. That's going to get into the stomach, but through indirectly, right? Indirectly, that won't invalidate. Okay, gums bleeding, and then you taste you felt the taste in the throat. These are like common ones that kind of just came up. This will invalidate your fast. This is something common which happens. All right. Will there be kafara, by the way? Will there be kafara if this happens? It won't be kafara. All right. Smoke enters the throat by one's doing. All right. So you've done something now where you've made that smoke come inside you. All right. And there's a little condition here, provided it doesn't you don't benefit from that smoke. Because if you benefit from that smoke, what do you think? Huh? Is it expiation as well? Is expiation. And this is why, what does benefiting mean? It's like there'll be some sort of like nourishing element to it. And this is why smoking, as an example, right? You've done something now to inhale some smoke. You've done that, it's your own doing. And there's actually a benefit in that. What's that? What's the benefit in smoking? Is there, there's no benefit in smoking? Huh? Stimulates you. Yeah, it stimulates you. And, you actually, it's a craving that you need it. Somehow it gets into the stomach. Yes, it's a craving. That's why they say the smoking, if you do that on purpose, you've done that, that's expiation there. You're ready for the 60-day fast. Now, okay. Eye drops. Bukhur. So bukhur, if the smoke has to be tangible, so you're going to obviously see if it's something that you can see. I'm just hoping this is gonna last, right? If you can see that and you do it, you advertently you inhale that just on its own, that's okay, that's fine. But you've done it on purpose. That's what it says. One's providing one's doing, yeah, one's doing. You've done that, so you've basically, you inhaled it on purpose. If you were just in the room, that's fine. But inhaled on purpose. That's smoke, by the way, something that you can see, a body which you can see. Otherwise, fragrance. You can't see, smell it, some other, that's fine. Right. So bukhur, yeah, if you've done that, if you've got the bukhur and, yeah, go around and everybody that, no. Okay, eye drops. Eye drops. Why the eye drops? Because what? Cavity goes into the throat. All right. Advertently vomiting a mouthful. All right, so you've done this yourself, right? You've taken, you basically, for some reason, you wanted to vomit out. And when you did vomit, it was a mouthful. What's a mouthful? Can't control it anymore. Can't control it. That would what? Invalidate the fast. Swallowing what is between the teeth on the condition that is the size of a chickpea or bigger. So if after, after suhoor, there's something that remains in your mouth and it's the size of what? A chickpea or bigger, and you swallow it, what's that done? That's invalidated now. That's why it's important to wash out, rinse out the mouth properly. All right. Yeah. But if there's anything outside the mouth, even if it's smaller than a chickpea food item, and you go and, basically you do like a Scooby-Doo thing, right? And you lick it back, you take it back in, that would invalidate, even if it's smaller than a chickpea. Okay. Eating or drinking because one doubted that Fajr entered, but Fajr really did. If that Fajr hadn't, doubted that Fajr entered, but Fajr really had entered. This is common as well. So you're unsure whether Fajr's come in or not, and eating, and then later find out what? Fajr had come in 2 minutes past, and I was 3 minutes past, 4 minutes past when I had stopped eating. That, so some people, Mazum mentioned this as well. You'll probably come across a hadith which says, when the adhan goes off, that the adhan would go off during the Prophet's era, and whatever you're eating, I think the hadith was a command that whatever you're eating, just continue and you can just swallow that. And so people use that with in the modern age when the time has entered now, and the azan's obviously probably your, your alarm clock or whatever is going off, or in the TV, and you know that this is the time now. It's 2 minutes past 5, and that's it. You should have closed, but it's in my mouth, so I can swallow it. And they base it on, they use that hadith that during the time of the Prophet azan happened and people continue, they carried on finishing the food. No, that's a misunderstanding of the hadith. That during the time of the Prophet there were 2 adhans. That first adhan that they carried on eating was the adhan of the tahajjud. That was the tahajjud adhan. The fajr one was second. So that one came later. So when they were eating, continued eating and swallowing whatever was in their mouth, that was not fajr adhan, that was tahajjud adhan. So, and then other people, they say, oh, you don't have to be that, it's not, Islam's not that difficult. We don't have to go by the minute. We don't have to go by the minute. It doesn't matter if you go over a minute or 2 minutes, it doesn't really matter. Right? That isn't really the approach that we should have, because our prayers are all based by minute, right? By the second. And so why the fast? Why do we compromise and, be lean into the fast? No, really it should be 5-10 minutes before, 5-10 minutes before close your fast, to avoid any sort of issues later. So the timing is really important. Okay, then we got water used to clean the nose of wudu, reaches the throat or the brain. That will invalidate. What doesn't invalidate the fast? Injections directly into the veins or muscles. This includes insulin, right? Bloodletting, even cupping, wearing lipstick. Yeah. Using what? Toothpaste. This is a common question. Toothpaste. Brushing the teeth. Using toothpaste. Does it invalidate the fast? No. However, it is disliked. There's a slight dislike in it. Why do you think it's disliked? Taste, firstly, that you can taste it, and possibility of swallowing it. Yeah, there's actually a good possibility. So be very careful. And generally, if you're not going out and whatnot, just use the miswak. Eardrops. So this is now advertently, on purpose, you're putting something into the eardrops. Otherwise, if you're just bathing and water goes, that's fine. All right. Smelling fragrance, like I said, that's fine. Itar, somebody just putting some itar on and you smelled it, that's fine. All right. Hugging, kissing, fondling spouse, that's fine as well. Doesn't invalidate. All right. Vomiting without one's doing, or vomiting less than a mouthful advertently. All right. So you vomited, and even if it was more than a mouthful, you vomited, but you didn't do it yourself. You didn't do anything, didn't force your finger down, and you vomited a mouthful, you're ill or whatever, that will not invalidate the fast. Okay, it's only when you've done it on purpose. Okay, swallowing tears or sweat, this can happen as well. Inshallah, there's going to be a lot of dua making and, shedding some tears and cleaning our hearts. So what if some of that tear goes into my mouth, mixes with my saliva, and I swallow it? What's the ruling? If I can taste the saltiness, or saltiness, right, of the tears or the sweat, then it would invalidate. Otherwise, a couple of drops of tears is okay. Yeah, try now. I mean, point is what? Don't put it in your mouth. Right? Use a tissue. Okay. What else does it invalidate? Swallowing vomit that emerges in the mouth without one's doing, even if it's a mouthful. So even if that goes back in, vomit goes back in, but you didn't do it on purpose, just ill, that goes back in, it will not invalidate. These are like common things, by the way. Maybe we should have even printed this out and you can take it home and just look at them again. Do you remember? Okay, and water used to clean the nose, the wudu or ghusl reaches the throat or the brain. Huh? Water used to clean the nose for wudu or ghusl reaches the throat or the brain. Does that invalidate the fast? That's wrong, isn't it? Yeah, take that one out. Is that right? See the other? Water used to clean the nose or for wudu or ghusl reaches the throat. This is when you've got a little bit of moisture left in your mouth. Little bit of moisture. When you do wudu, you're gonna have some moisture left. That if you tasted some of that water and kind of like whatever, trickle down or whatever, you felt a bit of that you're excused for. That one you're excused for. So don't like abuse it. And hot day, and are you allowed to have are you allowed, if it's a hot day, to have a bath just to cool yourself? Is that allowed? Yes, that's allowed. Good, excellent, mashallah. Okay, dust or smoke, including smoke from oud or incense, entering one's throat without one's doing. There's your answer, Siri, for that one. All right, swallowing 1 or 2 drops of that I've already mentioned that. Sniffing up mucus that is in the nose and it descends to one's throat, that's fine because it's already inside. Scratching the inside of one's ear with a Q-tip, even if dirt exits and you put it back in, that's fine. Okay, intending to break one's fast, and actually not doing it. So you made the intention, I'm going to break the fast, I'm going to break the fast, I can't hack it anymore, but you never do it. That's
Allah Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول أشهد أن محمدا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله لا إله إلا الله
okay. Shall we continue? Hopefully next week. With the inhalers, just come to my attention that Dr. Asim's fatwa, right? He's saying based on what his research is, that it's allowed, but he summarizes it, gives a actually nice. Let me just read it out. He says that if you're someone.
الله أكبر الله
Inshallah, next week.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن